Today I'm going to show you why the push to eliminate property taxes in the state of Florida will single-handedly produce more tax sale wealth than anything in history. Now, if you've seen the news before, you've likely seen the efforts of the state of Florida to eliminate property taxes. It's getting a lot of attention. Now, there are a number of great states to invest in, but when a state like Florida makes a move this big, you can bet the idea will eventually spread. Now, I've had families, friends, Tax Sale HQ members, Tax Sale Academy members, and even YouTube viewers ask me about this topic nonstop. So today, I want to dive into it. Now, I want to set the stage for you first. This topic can get political pretty quickly amongst some people. Some people see it as a good policy. Others think it's just a catchy talking point. I want to be very clear from the start. I don't take a political side on this topic. I'm not here to tell you who to vote for. I'm here to help you to make money with tax deeds and tax liens. What we'll talk about today is the idea of eliminating property taxes, the background behind it, what's actually being proposed now, the historical facts, and how it could impact tax sale investors like myself and like many of you folks watching. So if you have not followed this story, here's the deal. There's been a lot of talk about completely eliminating property taxes in the state of Florida. But this has seemed to shift a little bit as of late. The new focus seems to be eliminating property taxes on homesteaded properties. Those are homes that people live in as their primary residence. And supposedly, this elimination will go on the ballot in November of 2026. So obviously, this can make things very interesting for us as tax sale investors. Now, people turn to me for this type of stuff because I've been in the tax sale space for more than 23 years now. So let me be very transparent. I wish all taxes were lower or non-existent, starting with the 37% many people send to the federal government. It is absolutely absurd. And yes, I 100% agree. There's a lot of very wasteful spending at every level of government. But that's a system that we have created as a country. We have 3 layers of taxation for the most part. We have federal, state, and local layers. And changing any of those layers would have a rippling effect everywhere else. Now, if property taxes in Florida disappeared tomorrow, eliminated the tax deed and tax lien system, much to the dismay of the online education haters, I'll be just fine. 95% of my investments are already in other states. But Florida is still a fantastic market, and I've got a lot of Tax Sale Academy members that are investing here. And now, I've done very well in real estate over the years. I've done foreclosures, I've done spec homes, I've remodeled properties, developed subdivisions. I can find plenty of ways to make money. I'll be fine. But tax liens and tax deeds, they provided the best return versus effort that I've ever seen. Tremendous money, tremendous freedom, and a clear path for beginners to enter real estate. You know, it's a lot easier to turn a $3,000 tax deed into $10,000 than it is to develop 50 acres into 200 home sites. And believe it or not, I actually think that this elimination push will create a massive, massive opportunity for tax sale investors and likely one of the biggest Florida investors have ever seen. More on that later, so stick with me. Now, most of us can probably agree that people want less taxation. So this entire idea is generally supported. The problem, however, is that when the government promises one thing, we often get quite a few unintended consequences that we are stuck dealing with. Let's take a look back. Property tax elimination, it's not a new idea at all. It pops up every decade or two. We've seen serious pushes in 1980, 1992, and again around 2006, 2008. The last one is especially important. Back then, property values were skyrocketing during the boom, and tax bills were climbing extremely fast. So the state decided they wanted to double the homestead exemption from $25,000 to $50,000. They also capped assessments and created the Save Our Homes benefit that will now be portable. Sounds good, right? At first it was. The problem was that cities and counties lost about $2.3 billion in revenue almost overnight. Some saw their budgets drop as much as 10% in a single year. And of course, those tax dollars fund things like fire, police, roads, schools, so counties had to make up the difference somewhere. So what do? Well, millage rates went up, so now you pay higher tax rates on lower valuations. Special assessments exploded, things like fire and waste fees. Utility and service costs climbed, sending the excess to the county or the city's general fund. Local sales taxes also went up with half-cent sales tax, 1 cent surtaxes. They skyrocketed statewide. So while taxes looked lower, Homeowners actually, most of the time, ended up paying the same amount just through different line items. It also led to kind of an infrastructure type shift. Before those reforms, big infrastructure projects like road paving, sewer upgrades, drainage improvements were typically covered collectively by property taxes. My tax money would help pay for the neighbor's new road this year, and someday their taxes would help pay for mine. That's how it worked in a lot of areas. But once that revenue dropped, those costs shifted directly onto property owners through special assessments. Personally, I paid like $12,000 for a road paving assessment in front of a rental project. Same money, but instead of spreading it across everyone's property taxes, it was now my direct bill. Counties will always find a way to collect their money. Now, before we really dive into the latest proposal, how it will affect us tax sale investors, it's worth remembering how taxes actually flow. Most of the money we pay in taxes goes to the federal government. Again, upwards of 37% for a lot of people. That money disappears into Washington, and we rarely see a direct benefit from it. Then there is state taxation. Some states have income tax plus sales tax. Florida does not have income tax, thankfully, but we do pay 6% sales tax. That money funds different things like state law enforcement and highways, which we do notice, but maybe not on a direct benefit on a daily type basis. And then we have local property taxes. These are a little bit different. They fund local law enforcement, local fire departments, libraries, bridges, roads, schools. I drive on the roads every single day. Direct benefit. My son goes to a public school. Direct benefit. I run in the parks every single week. We visit the parks every week. Direct benefit. If I need fire, rescue, police, again, direct benefit. So if we wipe out local property taxes and replace them with a state-controlled sales tax, we lose a lot of the local control and potentially that local benefit. So let's talk about that some more. We're going to start with the extreme here. We'll say that all taxes are eliminated. Poof, gone, no more property taxes in the state of Florida. The analysts out there estimate that eliminating all property taxes entirely would remove around $55 to $60 billion per year in funding. Currently, Florida collects around $50 billion in state sales tax. So, based on those numbers alone, to make up for the total elimination of property taxes, Florida would need to double its sales tax from 6% to around 12 or possibly 13%. You add in local surtaxes, and some counties could hit sales taxes as high as 14%. Now, those numbers are just numbers I found online from a few different sources. Whether they are 100% accurate or not, that's way outside of my pay grade. But the point is, sales tax would have to go up tremendously if you completely eliminate property taxes. At that point, middle-income families would lose any savings that they thought they had gained. Renters who don't pay property taxes to begin with would get hit even harder by higher prices, since it's rare for landlords' tax savings to ever trickle down. And on top of that, you'd also end up with more folks relying on public assistance, which ironically would cost Florida even more money as the state has to contribute its share to federal programs. And when the economy slows down, sales tax also tanks. In April 2020, during COVID lockdowns, sales tax revenue dropped 24% in a single month in many areas. Property tax revenue, however, stayed stable because it was based on assessments, not spending. So from a stability standpoint, replacing property tax with sales tax is kind of like swapping out a steady paycheck job for a commission-only job in a down market. You also have to realize not all counties are created equal. Take Orange County, for example, home to Disney and a massive tourism base. They collect hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue every single year. Compare that to Liberty County, one of Florida's smallest counties, almost no tourism, a very tiny population, and they are heavily reliant on property taxes to provide their local services. So if property taxes disappeared, Orange County could probably handle it. Liberty County and many other counties would be devastated. So this means that the state would then have to redistribute that sales tax revenue. Big counties would essentially be sending money to small counties. And I'll tell you what, local governments will not trust that system very long, and neither should their citizens. Property taxes are local and predictable. With sales tax, the state would decide which counties get what. That means local governments would no longer have control over their own budgets or priorities. If you need a new school, more fire, EMS, more police, road repairs, you have to ask Tallahassee for approval. That's a major loss of independence. All right, so let's all take it back to the beginning. What does this mean for us as tax sale investors? Will we be crushed? Will we be put out of business? Not a single chance. Even if ad valorem property taxes disappear completely for every single property in the state of Florida, counties will still have non-ad valorem assessments, which they control. This will be the single tool that the counties have control over to produce the revenue that Tallahassee won't send them for the things that they, at the local level, feel are important. These assessments will skyrocket because counties have to fill the gap that they feel they now have somehow, right? Expect much higher fees for things like fire and EMS, garbage and recycling, lighting, drainage, stormwater, code enforcement, cleanup, and then you have community development district fees. Here's the wild part about this. When people don't pay those bills, those unpaid amounts become liens, and many of them can be sold to investors just like tax lien certificates are sold right now. And don't forget that many local governments also have control over utilities. And in other states right now, where property tax increases are limited or capped due to state laws or political unpopularity, those same utility bills have gone up tremendously as a revenue producer for the city to offset that property tax limitation. And guess what? Investors can buy water liens, sewer liens, municipal liens, and they do it every single day. So even if Florida ever eliminated property taxes entirely, rest assured local governments, they will still find ways to generate revenue, and unpaid bills will still become opportunities for investors. But let me get to the most exciting part. Let me get to the most promising part. This is something I am extremely excited about. Eliminating all property taxes in the state of Florida, it's very unlikely. It would change way too much, way too fast. I think most people agree that the elimination of all property taxes probably won't happen. But instead, we'll see some sort of compromise like we have in years past. The state who actually came up with the idea of eliminating all taxes and began to push it a while back, they've already backed off of it in favor of some sort of compromise. It is very possible that we see property taxes eliminated for homestead properties. So if you own and qualify for a homestead exemption, you don't pay taxes. Fair enough, right? Now, let me give you a sidebar real quick, and this will all come together very fast, I promise you. So I've been in the tax sale business for a very long time. And the odd part about this entire push is that there are actually very few homesteaded properties that end up at tax foreclosure sales in the first place. The number of properties that people are losing that are their homesteaded properties, the ones they live in, claim homestead exemption on, it's a fraction of the properties that actually end up being sold at tax sales. This morning, I went through 5 random counties: Miami-Dade, Pinellas, Marion, Polk, and Putnam. I searched their next tax sale, and this is all public record, by the way. Combined, at the next tax sale of all 5 of those counties, they will be selling a total of 205 tax delinquent properties. Of those 205 properties, 12 are under homestead exemption. So it's not like the bulk of the properties lost to tax foreclosure are homesteaded properties anyhow. But nonetheless, I get it. Let's say that those 12 are 12 too many, and we still must take the axe to taxes for homesteaded properties. This is where things get extremely interesting for us as tax sale investors. So counties would lose a solid chunk of money from the taxes of those homesteaded properties. While it might be offset slightly by a minimally higher sales tax rate, remember that that sales tax revenue goes to Tallahassee. And Tallahassee will then divvy it up as they see fit, and the local government loses control of that money. So local governments, again, will need to make up the difference for what they want at the local level. Outside of the assessments we discussed earlier, their primary tool for doing this would then become the ability to increase taxes on the non-homestead properties to offset that difference. Non-homesteaded properties are properties like lots, vacant acreage, second homes, commercial properties, that kind of stuff. Those are the exact properties that made up 193 out of the 205 properties that are being sold at tax sales in the coming weeks in the sample of those 5 counties that I looked at this morning. So, with the elimination of taxes on homesteaded properties, those taxes will have to shift to other properties. And more of the taxes on those types of properties will go unpaid. And when more go unpaid, even more end up at tax sales. So ironically, this push to eliminate taxes could create more tax sale properties than ever before in the state of Florida. Now, obviously, on those tax sale lists, we'll see no homesteaded properties, which I personally don't invest in anyhow. But we will see substantially more of the same exact type of properties that already make up the bulk of most tax sales. That's why I say what looks like a threat to our business could actually become one of the biggest opportunities we have ever seen in Florida as tax sale investors. Now, here's the bottom line. We don't know how this is going to play out. It remains to be seen. My prediction is just like in 1980, 1992, 2006, there's going to be some sort of compromise. Maybe they trim property taxes for homeowners. Maybe they tweak assessment caps or introduce new credits. But total elimination, it's very, very unlikely. Instead, maybe we'll see taxes on homesteaded properties drop while non-homesteaded properties and investment properties will carry a bigger load, which for us means more opportunities. Governments will always need revenue, and when people can't pay to produce that revenue, investors will be there to step in. That's how this business has worked, and that's how this business will always work. The names, the rules, the systems, they might evolve, but the core concept never will. So while the headlines scream about property tax elimination, my advice is very simple. Stay calm, stay informed, and get ready. Because if this plays out like I expect it to, it could open up a whole new wave of opportunity in the state of Florida. I would love to hear your thoughts in today's comment section. But of course, if you are looking to get ready for this, it is time to start learning right now, taxsaleacademy.com. Take care, folks, and make it a successful day. See you later. Bye-bye.